This is the Associated Press, a global news agency headquartered in New York City. As you know, President Trump signed an executive order renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and the AP made the decision not to embrace the new name. The Gulf of Mexico has carried that name for more than 400 years. The Associated Press will refer to it by its original name while acknowledging the new name Trump has chosen. As a global news agency that disseminates news around the world, the AP must ensure that place names and geography are easily recognizable to all audiences. And since the AP has made it clear that it will continue to identify the Gulf as the Gulf of Mexico, the White House decided to take action by indefinitely banning AP reporters from the Oval Office and Air Force One. Womp womp. In a statement, the AP's executive editor Julie Pace wrote, "It is alarming that the Trump administration would punish AP for its independent journalism." So according to the Associated Press, independent journalism includes writing whatever you want, even if it's not quite true. Anyway, the AP sued 3 Trump administration officials, including White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt and White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, claiming that their being barred from certain areas of the White House and events was violating their freedom of speech. Now, before we move on, I should probably explain what the White House press pool is and how it's composed. The Oval Office is too small to accommodate every news outlet that would want to cover events like executive order signings or meetings with foreign leaders. The press pool acts as the eyes and ears for the others who cannot attend. The press pool consists of, at minimum, 13 people. This includes 3 network TV journalists, a radio correspondent, and at least 1 print reporter. The outlets who are assigned to the pool differ from day to day. However, the following outlets are permanently assigned to the press pool: wire reporters from the AP, Reuters, and Bloomberg, and photographers from the AP, Reuters, AFP, and the New York Times. The AP and Reuters both have a wire reporter and a photographer. Those 2 outlets make up 30% of the press pool. Doesn't seem very equitable or inclusive, does it? Anyway, when a pooled event is over, the print, television, and radio poolers share written notes, video, and audio with the rest of the press corps. So in reality, the White House press pool can probably survive without the AP's participation. But the AP argues that it has the right to be there because it's always been there. In its complaint, the AP writes that it has participated in the White House press pool since its creation over a century ago, which made it possible for the AP to deliver to the public timely and thorough reporting on the president almost everywhere he goes, which is information critical to the public. So essentially, the AP's argument is that they are there because of tradition, which isn't going to hold up in any court. In their request for an emergency hearing, the AP claims that the White House has ordered the Associated Press to use certain words in its coverage or else face an indefinite denial of access. The press and all people in the United States have the right to choose their own words and not be retaliated against by the government. The Constitution does not allow the government to control speech. Allowing such government control and retaliation to stand is a threat to every American's freedom. The White House isn't ordering anything or anyone, but it is calling them out for not calling the Gulf of America by its now legal name. And if they don't want to be accurate, then why should the White House give them the very special privilege of access to the Oval Office? Well, the White House Correspondents Association wrote that the attempted government censorship of a free press risks a chilling effect on journalists doing their job without fear or favor on behalf of the American people. Our pool system is critical to ensure all of our members can cover the presidency, and prohibiting journalists from access because of their editorial decisions is viewpoint discrimination. But here's the thing. If the AP isn't given access to a space, then they can rely on the pool reports from the other journalists who were there. I mean, if hundreds of news organizations are able to effectively use pool reporting, then the Associated Press can work the same way. So in their complaint, the AP points out that membership in the pool is determined at the sole discretion of the White House Correspondents Association and the press corps itself. However, U.S. District Judge Trevor N. McFadden questioned why the government was obligated to follow the choices of the WHCA. It feels a little odd that the White House is somehow bound by the decisions this private organization is making. Judge McFadden also mentioned the AP's noting of its longtime membership in the White House press pool. Is this administration somehow bound by what happened with President McKinley? Context being that President McKinley was the first to provide reporters a space in the White House. But the argument that the AP has to be there because they've always been there isn't a very convincing one, especially not in a court of law. But case in point, just because the AP has been part of the press pool for over a century doesn't mean that they're somehow protected and can never ever lose their spot. The AP's other argument is that they weren't given notice, claiming that the White House is violating the Fifth Amendment's Due Process Clause, even though no one's life, liberty, or property is being taken away. Defendants gave the AP no prior or written notice of, and no formal opportunity to challenge, their arbitrary determination that the AP would indefinitely lose access to the Oval Office, Air Force One, and other limited areas as a member of the press pool, as well as access to larger locations open to a wider group of journalists and reporters, as well as access to larger locations open to a wider group of journalists and reporters with White House press credentials, unless the AP adopted the administration's preferred language in its reporting. Okay, but calling this the Gulf of America is not preferred language. The name was changed by executive action, so you can either call it by its legal name or not. So far, the judge has held off on ordering the White House to restore the AP's access to presidential events. A hearing has been set for March 20th. In the meantime, President Trump is taking dozens of questions from the press nearly every single day. And the Associated Press is missing out, all because they don't care about truly accurate reporting. But if this is the hill the AP wants to die on, I say we let them.
Who would like this pen? Hey, why don't you send it to Jack Smith? A deranged person.
So to further piss off the media elite, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt decided to shake things up even more.
Asking the President of the United States questions in limited spaces such as the Oval Office and Air Force One is a privilege that unfortunately has only been granted to a few. It is not a legal right for all. We want more outlets and new outlets to have a chance to take part in the press pool, to cover this administration's unprecedented achievements up close, front and center. As you all know, for decades, a group of DC-based journalists, the White House Correspondents Association, has long dictated which journalists get to ask questions of the President of the United States in these most intimate spaces. Not anymore.
I personally don't see a problem with this as long as the White House keeps the rotation balanced and gives more outlets a chance at access. But of course, the WHCA is pushing back. This move tears at the independence of a free press in the United States. It suggests the government will choose the journalists who cover the president. In a free country, leaders must not be able to choose their own press corps. However, one has to question the WHCA's integrity. So let's go back into history a little bit. April 26, 2023, during a joint press conference with the president of South Korea, Joe Biden took a question from a reporter.
Now we're going to take some questions. The first question is from Courtney of the Los Angeles Times.
Two photographers from AFP captured in detail what exactly Biden was reading from on the podium. This card not only contained the name of the reporter he was told to call on, but the card contained what was essentially the question that Biden would be asked.
Your top economic priority has been to build up U.S. domestic manufacturing in competition with China. But your rules against expanding chip manufacturing in China is hurting South Korean companies that rely heavily on Beijing. Are you damaging a key ally in the competition with China to help your domestic politics?
So notice that the question Courtney asked and the topic on the card were both framed around A, domestic microchip manufacturing, and B, if Biden is concerned that it's causing friction with our allies. How could the White House anticipate such a specific question?
So to people who saw that pocket card, can you explain how that ended up there and why the president needed something like that?
It is entirely normal for a president to be briefed on reporters who will be asking questions at a press conference and issues that we expect they might ask about.
Bullshit! It's one thing to prep before a big press conference. It's another to just so happen know the exact topic that a specific reporter was going to ask about. I mean, what are the odds? The WHCA claims that it's worried about journalistic independence of the free press, yet they had no problem whatsoever with the Biden administration picking and choosing in advance who was going to be called on at press conferences. Nor did they have anything to say about one of its own reporters giving Biden the questions in advance. At the time, Voice of America reached out to the then president of the WHCA, Tamara Keith, who declined to comment on the issue. I bet if there was even a hint of collusion between Fox News and the Trump administration, the WHCA would launch a full-scale investigation. But when Democrats do it, well, it's different. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time, if there is next time.